Over the last few episodes, we covered several agile roles and frameworks. We've only scratched the surface, and that was intentional. Today, I want to zoom in on one specific role in SAFe, the Release Train Engineer, or simply the RTE. Let's dive in. I'm Greg Miścichowski, and this is the Uncover Leadership Podcast. For over 15 years, I've been leading teams, and my mission is simple: to share my experience so you can grow on your own leadership journey. Each episode, I'll bring you some practical tips, real-world insights, and lessons from my path to help guide yours. So listen in. Let's uncover leadership together. Let's start the same way I usually do. What the RTE is not. An RTE is not a project manager, not by a mile. He's not just a task assigner or reporting machine. And definitely not just a Scrum Master with more teams. If you read about SAFe and Agile Release Trains, you may think, oh, this is just a Scrum Master on steroids. But that's not the truth. A Scrum Master optimizes one team. An RTE optimizes a system of teams. That is a completely different level of responsibilities. So let's pause a little bit and get comparison between Scrum Master and RTE. A Scrum Master focuses on sprint execution, daily stand-ups, removing team-level impediments, facilitating retrospectives, coaching one team and all of the members in that team, and he's protecting his team. That's a tactical approach, and it's close to the work itself. It needs to be focused on flow inside that single team. On the other side, an RTE operates vastly different. You're not responsible for the daily stand-ups because you don't have only up to 9 people, you have, between 5 to 12 teams. And you're not facilitating every retrospective for that number of teams that you're leading. You're looking at the bigger picture. You're looking at dependencies between teams, cross-team bottlenecks, system-level risks, and alignment across the whole train, including probably additional vendors that the teams are working with. Then, if you're going to think it from that perspective, you're going to see that the Scrum Master will look at the sprint that they're currently in and maybe next few sprints, what's ahead of them. On the other side, you're going to get the RTE that's going to look at the whole PI and what the next few PI is going to bring. I hope that shifted your perspective a little bit if you were comparing these roles as close to each other. Now, what's the responsibilities of RTE? And an Agile Release Train, like I mentioned, can have between 5 to 12 teams. You're going to have lower 50s to over 100 people. And your job in that role will be optimizing the flow across the whole train. So the flow of work over 100 people. You need to make sure that all of the risks are going to be visible. You need to identify and remove cross-team blockers. You're going to have to work with the system architect to get proper supporting of architectural designs and alignment for all of the teams. Then, like I mentioned before, to the communication and risk and cooperation, you need to add vendors. So you have a vendor interactions with the teams, maybe with one team, maybe with multiple teams. And on top of that, you need to protect the integrity of the whole system. Because when the teams are sharing environments, pipelines, or just the components, you will see bottlenecks. If one team becomes the only gateway to something critical in a system, in a product, that can be a really quick and noticeable bottleneck for everyone. And the RTE must see it before it becomes a crisis, a risk, an issue. Another responsibility that lies on RTE is to facilitate PA planning. This is an event that happened between 8 to 12 weeks. That's how long the product increment is taking in SAFe. And it's not just a single individual event. It's a 2-day sessions of planning with all of the teams. It's going to create that alignment between the teams. You're scaling up from one team to multiple. And you need to remember that if you are in the role of release train engineer, you will not build the plan. Your role is to make sure that the team's gonna build the plans for themselves. For each team, gonna create a plan for them. They're gonna have a cross-team collaboration if there is any dependency between the teams. And if we're talking about the release train engineer on a train that support, let's say, one area of the company, there will be a lot of dependencies. And you need to remember that if the company is going through the transition, RTE cannot create a plan just like traditional project manager would do. You're going to see the ownership disappearing from the teams. They're not going to be connected to the plan if they're not going to be the ones creating it. The teams must create their own commitments. Their plan is their commitment. So the role of RTE is to facilitate that event, ensure that there is that alignment, the communication between the team, touch points, breakout sessions. It needs to help the teams to make the dependencies visible as soon as possible, identify them, make them visible, have a discussion about them. And get that all of that completed, there need to be cross-team conversations. We need to have a lot of breakup sessions where you're going to see the conversations. Because if the teams don't talk to each other during the PA planning, there is a 100% certainty that the plan will fail. With that, I'm going to jump to the next responsibility of RTE, and it's to create the communication system. I just spoke about it a few seconds ago. During the PA planning, there need to be breakout sessions so the teams can have a communication between each other about the dependencies with their plan. But ongoing communication and discussions between the teams need to happen. And there are multiple solutions for that. You need to make sure that you have meetings like a Scrum of Scrums, sync meetings for Scrum Masters and product owners between the teams, and maybe some cross-team check-ins if they have dependency only between 3 teams. You don't need to bring everyone in on a call. I love reducing the number of meetings and touch points and calls, so try to think when it's necessary. It's probably going to be more necessary at the beginning if the train is forming, but later on some of the meetings can go out and we can just focus on actual delivery. You need to remember that when you're going to see that the teams start communicating without you, this is when you're going to know it's working. This is when you're going to know they are going the right way. They're going to call each other. They're going to solve problems independently, maybe just informing you, and you're going to see a lot of collaboration between the teams. This is when we're going to know that the system is stable. And let's go with the next responsibility of RTE. An RTE does not coach the team members. That's the role of a Scrum Master. An RTE coaches Scrum Masters. One level up. That person in that role needs to elevate the leadership layer. That person needs to help them see the patterns, need to help them recognize systematic issues, and guide them in improving the team flow. We need to make sure that the impact is multiplied by the number of teams. It's not just the one team that is impacted. There are going to be 5, 12 teams. So the impact needs to be that much multiplied. And that's when we're going to know, that's when we can show at the company that the scaling is working. And if we are talking about coaching, the coaching does not stop for RTE on Scrum Masters. He needs to coach the leadership. This is one of the hardest part of the role. the train will not succeed without leadership support. If leaders bypass the system, let's say they're going to assign work directly to the team members, they're going to skip connection with the RTE, with Scrum Master, the system going to collapse. The predictability going to collapse because the teams will not be able to fill the promises with the plan that they created during the PA planning. So the RTE must educate leadership on PA planning. He needs to clarify that the roadmaps that are created and communicated, they are just forecasts, they are not guarantees. Because there are going to be a lot of trade-offs on the way. We can have shifted priorities, we can change the requirement from the business at some point, and maybe something is no longer needed for the company. We need to set realistic expectations around predictability. Because if the teams delivered a certain velocity in the last PI, that's need to be a reference point. We can assume that similar scope and complexity can be addressed in the next PA planning if they're truly similar. In that role, RTE is constantly aligning expectations between the business and the team. Now let's be honest, and maybe a little bit brutal. The RTE role sounds simple, but it's hard. RTE is responsible for the health and flow of the work for up to 12 teams. If you are in that role, you probably see that the teams are overcommitting. Some teams gonna under-deliver. You're gonna have issues and problems with the vendors that can disrupt the process, especially if they're working, let's say, with waterfall. You're gonna see dependencies that are gonna cause friction between the teams and create or maybe break the alignments. And you're gonna have a lot of emotional tensions across different groups of people. And a lot of that gonna be visible, especially in early PIs when the team's gonna be forming, when the whole train gonna be forming. And that's when a lot of things gonna feel unstable. We need to remember that scaling Agile is not linear. You're working with humans, so there will be ups and downs. And your job as an RTE is to stabilize the system. You cannot panic because you are the person that a lot of eyes going to be turning on to see where we're going. Are we sure we can get there? And what's our next steps? And all of that, all of the roles, responsibilities, all of the connections, that's not everything. That's just the tip of the iceberg. But let's pause for that. I want you to think about something this week. If you are building teams, do you create a space for them to think, collaborate, and resolve the issues by themselves and create outcomes? Or are you just building teams that will simply execute tickets? There is a difference. You need to remember that at scale, that difference becomes visible very quickly. I'm going to finish for now today for the RTE role. Next week, I want to explore another key role in Agile Release Train in SAFe, the product manager. I want to just touch point what that role truly owns, how it supports the system, and what it should not be doing. Thank you for listening. As always, if you liked this episode and if you're listening to my podcast, please follow me on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you're listening to this podcast. And see you next week. Thank you.